It's more like the D5S than the D6, Steven. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is the official preview of the Nikon D6. Now it's currently 11:49 in the PM because Nikon didn't even let us know that they were announcing a camera. I guess they didn't want it to leak, or in my opinion, after seeing these specs, maybe they were too embarrassed by the specs of this camera to even want to tell us about it because they don't want us to talk about it or to discover that it's really, well, let's just get to the specs. There is a 20.8 megapixel sensor with no IBIS. Remember when the rumor sites were saying that this camera would have IBIS? It does not have IBIS in it, and that 20.8 megapixel sensor sounds awfully familiar. Now it can shoot at 14 frames per second mechanically, but in silent mode, you think it can do 20 frames like the 1DX Mark III or like the A9 II, which is hiding back here? No, it can do 10.5 frames a second silent. Or in the weird mode, it can do 60 frames per second at 2 megapixels or 30 frames per second at 8 megapixel stills, which are basically JPEGs just grabbed from video, which are going to be useless. So doesn't shoot more frames a second in silent mode, or like the 1DX Mark III that can shoot 20 frames per second with the mirror locked up. This Nikon D6 does not do that. Now, Nikon touted a new focusing system with 105 autofocusing points. It's funny, the D5 had 153 autofocusing points, but they're saying that the D6's autofocusing points are better with only 105 because they're clumped more closely together in a more dense area. Now, if you've ever shot with a mirrorless camera, whether it's the cheapest mirrorless camera or the most expensive mirrorless camera, you know that you can have the entire viewfinder of coverage of autofocusing points. And I don't care to have more autofocusing points clumped into the middle of a frame because they don't do anything. You can't get up here, you can't get down here, you can't get over here, you can't get over here, and that's one of the downsides of DSLRs at this juncture. So the new autofocusing system, having more densely populated autofocusing points, is really a non-factor in my mind. Now, in terms of ISO, we go from 100 to 102,400 natively, all the way up to 3.2 million, which is Swiss cheese mode, which you'll never ever go to, but that is the same as the D5. Now, what is not the same as the D5 is that you have 2 CF Express card slots. Nikon did that right in this camera, but that's one of the only things that is different. Those are blazing fast cards, but you're not really getting blazing fast speeds out of this camera, so it doesn't really matter. Nikon pushed 2 things with this camera, at least in the press release that we saw, because they didn't give us a briefing or any other information. They pushed 2 things hard. The new autofocusing system that I just talked about with clumped focusing points together, and the workflow. The fact that there's GPS, Bluetooth, Ethernet connectivity. They push the fact that it's one of the most connected cameras that they've ever made, which is the only people that care about that are agencies and wire photographers, but not the everyday photographer. They don't need the connectivity for Ethernet and everything to plug in to quickly transmit stuff. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that the image that you see on the screen right now was taken with the Nikon D5 and edited using FroPak 2. If you're looking to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, we created 15 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPak2. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide that it's for you, you can currently pick up FroPak 2 at 40% off, or if you'd like to get the FroPak bundle with FroPak 1 and FroPak 2, you can save even more. Now let's get back to the disappointing specs. Video, 4K at 30 frames per second. Whoop-de-doo. Nothing special there, especially when you have a 1DX Mark III sitting on the table. And the last thing that they have here is the price. $6,500 available in April, and those are the main specs that they gave us. This, in essence, is a D5S. I wouldn't even classify this as a D6. This is like, oops, we need to come out with another camera for some purpose, for some reason. They could have just revamped the D5. Honestly, they probably just revamped the D5 and were like, let's put in some CF Express card slots and call it a day, because this is a highly highly disappointing camera that gets a do not buy it rating, or as I wrote, don't buy it. This is a don't buy it camera. If you're just getting into photography today, you're not buying a Nikon D6. If you own a Nikon D5, you're not buying a Nikon D6. You're waiting for Nikon to hopefully come out with a pro mirrorless body. Hopefully Nikon is working on a pro mirrorless body, because right here with this 1DX Mark III that shoots at oh my God speed, we'll call that oh my God speed, and that's with the mirror flip down 16 frames per second. It will do 20 frames per second with the mechanical shutter with the mirror flipped up. This is a mirrorless camera that's masquerading as a DSLR. This blows the Nikon so far out of the water that it's not even funny. I broke out the what is this, a D1. This is the original. The Nikon D6 is the end of the road, the last pro DSLR that Nikon will ever make, and it's honestly a disappointment. The future lies right here. This is an A9 II. This blows the D6 out of the water, and it basically has 3.5-year-old technology already in it, because it came out 2.5, 3 years ago with the A9 I, and now you have the A9 II. I'm just really dumbfounded by what Nikon did here. It's basically, hopefully the reason is they spent a ton of time researching and developing for the Z Pro camera, and then this was just an afterthought that they're like, oh, well, Canon's got this coming out, we might as well put out a new camera. I'm looking for some other specs that I possibly missed, but I didn't miss anything, and that explains why Nikon snuck this out almost in the middle of the night without telling us, because they were hoping that we wouldn't even notice. And honestly, the industry will not notice. And I'll get a lot of crap in the comments saying that I'm just ripping on Nikon. I'm not ripping on Nikon just to rip on them. If you think these are good specs, then there's a problem. These would have been great specs 5 years ago, but seeing what a 1DX Mark III can do today versus a Nikon, it doesn't matter. Nobody's switching from Nikon to Canon to get a DSLR at this juncture. Anyway, so what do you guys think? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.